Hi everybody, it is me again, and this week I am actually switching up the what's actually on the syllabus. So if you're following the syllabus very seriously, I just want to give you a heads up. I initially assigned an article by Rosemary Zagari, which I had not read yet. I've read Zagari's book, which is called Revolutionary Backlash, and it's right here. I love this book. I think it's utterly fantastic. So I wanted to assign something by Zagari and that article preceded this book. I went and read the article, and I thought it was a little too much detail, a lot of stuff to digest. So instead, and it's also quite long. So instead, I actually decide to scan the introduction of this book, which is only 10 pages and is a very similar argument that she makes in the article, but I thought it was an easier, more digestible read. So I just want to give you that heads up. Also, quick heads up, you must watch this video before reading. This video includes the historian Rosemary Zagari discussing essentially what she's arguing in this book. And it's really important, really excellent. She says it very simplistically, easy to understand. It's also quite cool to kind of get to see the people that write the books in the articles that we read. So take a look at that. Also, to find the reading, you're going to click this link, which is going to take you to a Google Drives that will have the article. Just make sure that you read them in order, okay? Pretty simplistic. Lastly, I want to tell you a little bit, I want to make sure about this week's assessment. So let me go and show you. This week's assessment is only one question, okay? But you're going to need to write an entire paragraph to answer that question. And I have a very specific way that I want you to answer it, so in terms of structure. So I'm going to explain that really quickly. So first of all, you're going to be writing a body paragraph that answers the question, how did women's political status change after the American Revolution? Okay, and I'm having you do this as a practice before you have to write your paper on Kingdom of Matthias, okay? So in order to teach history writing or writing for the historical discipline, I have a very structured way that I teach body paragraph writing. I think that body paragraph writing is the meat of a good paper, and I think that if you have a good structure and you can portray your argument very well in a simplistic way, that will make your writing seem clear and concise and good. And so in order to do that, I write with a very simplistic outline in mind, and I teach that because I think it's a helpful way to learn how to write for history. So that outline is discussed here, and so I have it in an outline form, but you will write it in a paragraph form, but your paragraph must include all of these things, okay? A topic sentence that has your thesis. Essentially, this will be your thesis because you're only writing one paragraph, right? So you're going to argue something about how women's political status changed following the American Revolution, okay? Then you're going to have an example, and the example is going to come from concrete historical evidence that you find in the introduction of Zagari's book, okay? Then you will cite that evidence, an example. So all I want, because it's going to be one source, just in parentheses, give me a page number, okay? Then you will analyze that example. And what I mean by saying analyze it, you're going to put in very simplistic terms that you are how the evidence supports the argument that you've stated, okay? So I typically advise people to start their analysis sentence, and it's a good way to think about it, as this example shows, this example demonstrates, this evidence exemplifies, exhibits, all those things, right? If you think about it with that, it'll show you how to connect it right back to your argument again. Then you will repeat. You're going to do another example, citation, and analysis, and then finally a third example, third citation, and third analysis, and then ending with a simple concluding sentence, okay? So you're going to essentially just, if you include all of those things, you should be in good have a great answer. Make sure you're writing in only third person, and that your writing is good quality, because you will also be rewarded up to 5 points for good quality writing. Okay, so enough about that stuff. Let's actually talk about the history. So I guess I'll go back to this and we can put up Rosemary Zagarri. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about this history a little bit to give you an idea of what to expect in this reading and what is really important about gender and political status at this time period for women. Okay, so Rosemary Zagarri is kind of talking about this time period right after the American Revolution, but it's important to understand women's role during the Revolution to understand what happens after. So a couple statements about women during the Revolution. Women were essential parts of the Fighting the Revolution. Of course, they did not fight on the battlefield very frequently. There may be a few cases in which that's true. There is a myth about that we've discovered that's not true, but women were participating very much, and especially in ways of boycotting, right? When we think of the American Revolution, we think about tea, right? And we think about sugar, though, especially in terms of what Americans were buying or boycotting in order to show political strength, right? In the beginnings of the Revolution, a lot of boycotts happening. They were boycotting British goods to show that they, as a form of protest. And women were really the organizers of these boycotts. They were making sure that the word was spread that people did not buy them, and also women did most of the shopping, and so they could participate in that way. Women became good political actors. They did not often have the right to vote, but they could show their political activism in other ways, okay? And so at the end of the Revolution, there was this moment of hope that maybe women would gain serious political participation in political roles. That unfortunately did not really happen. And that's mostly about what Zagarri talks about. There's a shift after the Revolution that leads to something called Republican motherhood. And this goes very much with this two spheres that it comes out of this Victorian age of gender, right? There's a male sphere and there's a female sphere. And the male sphere is political, economical, out in the world, dealing with an outside perspective, and they have more say in terms of what's happening in the economy, what's happening in the government, and all those things. Women are tied to this domestic sphere. So they were caretakers of their children. They ran the house. They cooked and cleaned and did all those things. But also, in terms of raising their children, it became important that women became educated, because they would be raising young men that would become influential and important men in America, right? So this Republican motherhood becomes really important to women and their role in society. It has its benefits, right? It's kind of a two-sided coin, this Republican motherhood. It does get women to have opportunities to be educated so that they can fit this quote-unquote Republican mother perfectly. But that education is meant to educate their sons. And so it still goes back to this patriarchal society. After the Revolution, I said there was a chance that maybe women could gain some sort of political player. They could become a political player in a real way in terms of voting and being able to run for office and those things. But that's really shut down by the Constitution, which limits the right to vote to mostly white men and mostly white men with property. So we don't see that, but I hope that you enjoy learning about women after the American Revolution in terms of politics and government, and I hope you enjoy Rosemary Zagarri. I think her writing is so interesting and her gender analysis is amazing, so please enjoy. Have a great week. I will talk to you later. Oh, and don't forget to get Kingdom of Matthias. You must get it. Okay, bye.